Welcome to Impact Us All, the business podcast for making substantial change. I'm your host, Jimmy Newson, the Impact Influencer. Join me as I explore the stories, strategies, and insights of entrepreneurs, industry experts, and national and global brands that care. We focus on the initiatives that make a significant difference in communities around the world and bring you innovative techniques for overcoming challenges and barriers in your business journey. This is a place for real-world lessons, actionable advice, and inspiring insights to help you elevate your unique selling proposition for professional and personal growth. Stay tuned as we dive into this week's impactful strategies. Let's move forward together, because together we can impact us all. In this episode, please allow me to introduce you to our amazing guest, Neil A. Caruso. Neil is an award-winning journalist and entrepreneur, News Nation associate producer of the Elizabeth Vargas Report, and the founder, president, and CEO of Caruso Enterprises. All right, we're back. Strategy-aligned professionals, impactors, continuing this movement, continuing the motivation around impact for you and your business, your community, whoever and wherever that may be. I'm excited to bring our next guest on, Neil A. Caruso. Me and him have had an opportunity to connect multiple times, and we're even looking at a bright future together in regards to supporting small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and even enterprise businesses. So this is exciting because there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of overlap in regards to what we're going to talk about today in regards to impact and Neil's unique perspective working with businesses of all size. So first of all, Neil, thank you for agreeing to be on the podcast.
Well, Jimmy, thanks for having me. I wouldn't say no to you, so appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's absolutely my pleasure. So before we get into impact, like we always do, let's let the listeners know who you are. And if you forget something, I'm going to jump in and go, hey, you got to tell them about that too.
Don't be bashful, as they say. No, I appreciate that. So, well, you can see I'm on a TV set. So I work in News Nation. I'm a producer here at the Elizabeth Vargas Report show. So we just finished our show a few minutes ago, so we're recording this. I also own my own business. So my company, Caruso Enterprises, manages production for clients, and we do live events, a bunch of things from podcasts to panels to anything you name it, helping businesses with their marketing. So that's my day-to-day. Can't fit it all into 8 hours, but you and I are alike in that area.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely never enough time in the day. And you've won quite a few awards too, because you're an award-winning journalist and entrepreneur. And that's what I love about talking to you, because again, you're not just someone working with big organizations and having access to these big organizations, but you're also a small business owner.
Yeah, I am. I own and operate it myself, and so I really connect with a lot of small businesses. Yeah, well, and I have a few clients who operate very small boutiques, mid-sized businesses on the portfolio as well. So it's an interesting mix, and I grew up around business. My dad is a business owner, and so I grew up kind of going to his office every day after school, and so I always wanted to own my own business as well. So yeah, it's an interesting mix to combine the two. People always said to me when I was at college, like, how do you do business and journalism? But for me, it kind of goes hand in hand.
Absolutely. And again, going to those awards, tell me about a few of the awards that you won, because this I find fascinating.
So the list is on LinkedIn. I would have to remind myself of them,
Sure.
But no, honestly, awards from the Associated Press, Radio, TV, Digital News Association. When I worked in radio, Radio Week magazine named me one of radio's 30 and under superstars. So I'm pushing 30, so I got a couple more years left to hold on to that moniker. But a bunch of awards from journalistic organizations. I'm very fortunate to work on some great teams, some great colleagues. So that's kind of the short of it.
Absolutely. So I'm not going to say how old I am, but I was, how I got introduced to Neil was through Joe Connolly, who is a friend of Rob Walsh, and they're all in the WCBS world. And so he goes, I got to get on with my producer. And it's funny because you said thing. I go, man, this dude looks young. I'm like, all right. But then the credentials, I was like, wow, you've accomplished a lot. And I'm not going to ask you how old you were when I met you, and I'm not going to ask you now. But you said you're not 30 yet, and I'm like, man, I should have started sooner.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, people ask me, why did you, get in journalism, and how did you start? And to me, it just became natural. I mean, I used to sit in my living room growing up as a kid, and I have a picture. I only let my mom take one picture growing up, and I was in the living room with a microphone doing my own little talk show, and my grandfather calling, and I would do sports. And I used to do play-by-play at Mets games for the TVMU. So it's always something that interested me. And then, here we are. But no, it's been great working with people like you. And it's funny to see, things evolve and look back at those old pictures.
Absolutely. All right. So let's get into it. That was a little bit of fun.
Let's get into the meat.
I hope you guys enjoyed that. I enjoyed it. Let's start with the first question I always ask after the introduction of yourself. What does impact mean to you?
Impact to me is about creating opportunities for other people. For me, I've always looked at both business and journalism as a public service. I don't think that you do it alone. I think that you go out in order to serve the community. So whether it's producing newscasts like I do, or day-to-day creating opportunities for other businesses and partners, clients, customers, we're all here on this earth for a finite amount of time. So how do you create opportunity for others, create wealth for others? And, frankly, life is short. And you can go and have fun with that at the same time. It's not all about money. You really want to, spend your time doing well for others.
Absolutely. And I love that. And again, that is impact it's never about money when it comes to impact. The cool thing is money can be a part of the solution, the byproduct of having impact, and because impact is bigger than us all, and it's just a question of who is the impact for. So let's look at your role in what you do and how you support people. Let's start, we'll focus on the professional, but you can more than welcome to integrate personal as well. What motivated you to create your career path? And you talked a little bit about being on the microphone when you were a kid and with your grandfather. Was that the motivation, or what got you onto this path?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I just loved sports, and I looked up to the announcers who have been fortunate to even befriend over the years, calling Mets games. But then, as I got older, I mean, for me, I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to be impactful in that sense. And then creating my own business, which I did in college, was all about really helping others through journalism. So it was journalism business at first, did some events, got to work, on production. And I wanted to just frankly be my own boss in some aspects and have ownership over what I'm doing media wise. But then during COVID, the business took a big pivot because a lot of business owners, and you mentioned CBS, and that was my form where I used to work with Joe Gotti. And that's when a lot of business owners, as opposed to the business show, said, I need to make this digital pivot. I don't have a website, or I don't have a big social media. And they were coming to me like, can you help in any way? Do you have connections? I'm like, frankly, I can do this. I can help people. So that became a service in and of itself, where I said, look, I can design a website. I have, friends who do websites and production too. And I can bring these people together and we can help you. And so helping them create their digital, make that digital pivot at the time was really essential to keep them open. And then it became a real growth, vehicle for them. And so I still have clients who maybe started during COVID. And so that's been a real, you look back and that was such a crazy time in our lives. Mm-hmm. But that was a big turning point for business.
Yeah. And so let's focus in on that digital that you talked about as impact. So what kind of impact have people seen because of the work that you've been doing on their behalf?
a lot of them have been able to grow sales and reach more customers. So I had one client, either one of the first, one of the first three that reached out to me, that, became close friends. They said, look, our website is old. We don't do enough on social media. We know that. And so I helped them create content during COVID. And in a short period of time, they went from zero sales, because we're all retail, to doubling what they had previously. And that's now something that's core of their business model, is being half retail, half digital. And during COVID, they were all digital because that's something they could do.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up expanding north of the border to Canada. And they were able to expand into other states in the U.S. So that was, pretty cool to see the evolution of that. There have been a few others, or products or services that they've just reached other people through social media where they weren't doing it well. And I had to learn, could I do digital ads the right way? And TV and digital ads are completely different. So and at that time I was in radio, so radio ads are really different type of storytelling. So creating all of that for clients became a new sense of urgency and product.
Absolutely. And so again, so you're traditional, because you're still living in the traditional media world, and then you got the digital media world. Is there a balance between the two that you might be doing with someone, or how someone should take advantage of that type of impact?
Well, I think media has evolved, as you know, and it is constantly evolving. So you're going to keep up with it. I think we had talked on a webinar that you hosted about not being afraid to push limits, and I think you need to do that on social. For me, my brain is very professional, so I understand, why you want to keep it to a certain fee. But I think what I've been able to learn over time is you need to really connect with people. And sometimes it's being, that's trying something new. Sometimes it's being a little bit more entertaining. And truthfully, for small businesses, the business owner is the face of the brand. So they need to learn how to connect with their customers and need to be comfortable in front of the camera and tell their story. And how are they going to do that? If you have big personality, use that personality. I find a lot of business owners, they have a big personality, meeting with clients, camera turns on and they turn, they clam up.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to just pretend it's not there. Be yourself. And that's what I tell people is be you no matter what, be authentic. And that's what will connect with people.
Sure. And you're absolutely right. I spent as of this recording last week, I did a lot of interviewing of C-level executives, business owners, and entrepreneurs at a big trade show, and I could see the difference between them. And I even pulled people off the floor that didn't, and they were like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Get over here! I'm interviewing you." And they're just like, "What?" I'm like, "You own a business?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Get over here!" And you could see the fear in their eyes. But by the end of it, even because I was walking with them, I helped put my hand on their shoulder periodically. They calmed down. And they did better than they thought they were going to do. And sometimes it's putting yourself in the fire, but then there's still, I know you do a lot of coaching with people beyond that. So that doesn't mean that they can't benefit from additional coaching, especially you can't just be on someone's podcast, okay, for a minute and then be on the some major news network. What does that transition look like?
So I think you just have to get comfortable. You just have to do it. I mentor of mine when I was in college, and I was interning, told me my senior year, get on the air every single day.
Wow.
Because that was a path that I was pursuing, and it was get on the air, produce a show for yourself, and get on the air every day. Whether it's a podcast, whether it's radio, whether it's TV, whatever it is, but get on the air. And I took that advice. Literally 6 days a week, I did a podcast, audio, and video. And that for me was great training because you test the limits a little bit. You figure out how to be on camera, not just once a week, where you're, a student radio station for me. And it was, there were a bunch of other students that need opportunities. I may have been on there a couple more times during the week, but you really hone that skill by doing it. And it's the same thing with digital. It's, record yourself. We all have it. We all have a phone with a camera. go and use this device and, and talk and get comfortable talking about your business. And it's funny because I recorded with someone, a new client of mine that is selling a product. And we did a whole video shoot in our office, and she's doing this pitch. And I noticed, like, when we were talking in the kitchen, it was great. Camera's turned on, she clams up. So I'm like, you know what? Just look at me. Forget it at the camera. And as we went on, she got much more calm. But it's going to take practice. And I said, after we were done, it's going to be the second, the third shoot, fourth shoot. Eventually, it becomes second nature. And you just have to do it. You just have to put yourself out there. And it's, it's like anything. It's like, approaching a girl for a date. It's like you just put yourself out there. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with business. And it's funny because she clearly knows her business backwards and forwards. You talk to her off camera, and she'll tell you all the details. And I got the budget and the branding, and I got this whole big business plan. Okay, well, that needs to shine through the camera because clearly you are a master of the material, but you just need to convey that. Forget the cameras here, but the more you do it, the better.
Now, I think there's two things there. So you're unique in a number of ways because producers produce and talent is talent. And you seem to possess both. So are you on camera yourself? Because when I see you as the big producer.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I think that's a good thing. A little bit of both, which I think is a strength. Because so when I worked with Joe Connolly, Joe would do this thing, and we would talk about it after your webinar. He would always say to me afterwards, he would say, Neil, do you have any questions yourself? And I would sometimes give them one or two, and that would keep them going. And I do it with talent today. It's like, what? Sometimes they trust my instinct to be able to say, what? We need to go this direction. You need to think kind of in both ways. At least that's in my industry. And for business, at least I can, from a media perspective and a business perspective, connect with a business owner or whoever we're doing a video with, and say, okay, I understand where you're coming from the business side, but from the media side, you really need to, do this to get attention. Mm-hmm. And that's where, like, from my, and you mentioned media training, but from the event side of my business, people come to me not just to be able to produce an event with, the food and everything, but to make something compelling and engaging that, frankly, what we do in news is we do need to get ratings, right? So it's writing a story that's compelling. And so when it comes down to an event, it's writing speeches, it's organizing a panel, it's putting it, you get 10 minutes, no more.
Yeah.
Because what's going to draw people in, and I think you understand that from a podcast perspective too, and you've been doing this for a while, is okay, how do I move this conversation along? And you do a great job at navigating that. And it's certainly funny to be on the other end of it, but you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you. And I feel extremely honored to hear that from you, first of all. And it's funny because when I met you and we started to actually like connect and bond and talk about all these other cool things we could do together, I was like, man, I'm going to interview him. Okay, this is going to be, I know I like to think that I'm good at what I do, but it's good to get that opinion from a producer.
No, you are, and your passion shines through, and that's, I think you're a great example of letting your passion shine through without being, too over the top. Mm-hmm. Obviously all of us love our businesses and could go on and on. But in order you do want to show that passion. And I think a lot of people, that's the thing where it's about they clam up. And that's the initial start. Some people are better than others. I had a conversation with someone yesterday, actually, who has a restaurant in California, and he started doing all these, media things, just pushing the limits. And you'd tell he's got this comfortability with himself and no shame, and like goes out and does it. And that's great. Some people can do that or, learn to get comfortable, but, it's not natural to everybody. And he said it wasn't natural for him. It seems like it was, but it wasn't. Some things are more natural than others. We all have our strengths. You gotta play to those.
Yeah. And I'll be vulnerable here. I'm an introvert, and most people meet me. They're like, no, you're not. I'm like, it's the passion. It's always the passion. I go, when I'm talking about something I'm passionate about, you can't tell because I'm now comfortable. I've blocked everything out, and I get to talk about something that I really enjoy talking about. And so that brings me to what you mentioned something a little bit earlier, and I wanted to touch on. And you talked about like the 10 minutes you were saying for the interview, but in
I,
the media standpoint, in your line of work, where you might have somebody on camera with, say, the host, they may only have what, 30 seconds, a minute.
Yeah, I mean, it changes day to day. I mean, TV, it's very quick. When we did that Small Business Spotlight series at CBS, Joe and myself, we would sit down with the guys for like 20 minutes, but I would cut that down. I would cut 8 minutes out of it. And in the beginning, it was so hard for me to edit because I did all the editing myself and I loved every minute of it. And it's like when you're so tied to a project and just like a business owner who loves a service, but it's not selling, or a product and it's not selling, eventually got to make a tough decision. It's really hard to self-edit. And that was a challenge for me, was how do I cut 8 minutes out? So I'm a little bit better with that now, but sometimes you have a guest on for 5 minutes, and they go long, let's say. I mean, just now in the control room, right? We had a segment that went on a little long. Okay, we got to cut from another segment. And it stinks as you work a whole day at producing that segment. So you got to get the best stuff out front. And it's similar with digital. It's like, you know what? A lot of times you're doing reels that have to be under 60 seconds. You got to get the most compelling stuff up front. You can't do long form. And that's what you see now. The most popular things are very short and quick, and they keep your attention. And you have to learn to kind of self-edit. Eventually, it becomes a little bit easier when you're talking to people. I know you do a lot of speeches, a lot of events. Eventually, it becomes a little bit easier to self-edit, and you could be talking unscripted and know when the natural point to stop is and not go on.
Absolutely. And for those who might be doing the audio version of this conversation that I'm having here with Neil, and you hear some noise in the background, again, Neil said earlier, he's actually in the television studio, ladies and gentlemen. So he's giving you the goods. So okay, here's a off the wall question. It being in the studio, are you doing live stuff as well, or is it pre-recorded?
We do a mix. I mean, the show that I work on is live. There are shows here at Musician that are pre-recorded, but for the most part, live. Sometimes you get a really big guest, and we say they're pre-tape worthy. So we'll do a pre-tape now earlier in the day, especially if they're overseas and the timing doesn't work out. But for the most part, we're doing it live, which is a challenge. But I love live. For me, I've always wanted to do live. Sometimes tape has a role, but there's nothing like live TV, breaking news, stuff like that. And you hear a lot of buzz behind us because as we're recording this, and this is really from a news side, we're covering the trial of Trump. So we have been preparing for a verdict, right? So there's a big buzz, like whatever, there's a big story. It could be breaking news in Ukraine, it could be whatever it may be. There's always a lot of buzz, and so there's a lot of preparation for what's going to happen. And just like in business, we want to be prepared at all times, so we have to prepare for different scenarios for that.
Sure. So let's switch up a little bit and let's talk a little bit about challenges. And you can either give me challenges based on you working with small businesses or businesses in general, or challenges with you as you navigated your career. And I love that. The challenges, I always say, you're not a plumber, you're not a baker, you're not a consultant, you're a problem solver. And you
And
can't solve problems if there are no challenges. You know,
yeah, I like that. I
you
liked when you said that first time to me. Yeah.
yeah. So I love that because again, it gives you a chance to one, be useful, good useful, and two, to really test the waters and give people something that they really do need. You know, and I just got off a call with one of our members, and we are talking about minimal viable products, and she was struggling with fully understanding it, and I was like, you know, we use this thing called the Moscow method, and I learned this recently, so I'm excited about that, and because I'm a big nerd like that, and it stands for, you know, when we talk about minimal viable products, must haves, should haves, could haves, won't haves. And then you take whatever that product is, a service or product, and you break it down into those four categories. Regardless of whatever it is, you need to start with the must haves first. And then maybe and the should haves can be there, you know, but the must haves is what people are going to pay you for. So what I'm getting to here is we did a bit of a deep dive today, and I said, here are the must haves, and they seem pretty obvious. But what I really had her to focus on was, you got to go, if you're talking to a group of people who understand your topic, they're still struggling with something. And it has to be in one of these 4 or 5 points in the must haves. Now it's your time to go deep and show your expertise in one of them. Because you say this a lot. You know, you can be very knowledgeable in a lot of things, but I want you as in a news perspective, or as in a producer perspective, to be good at that one thing. What is that?
Yeah, Jimmy, that's exactly what I tell my clients, actually, they do video training with. So a lot of it is, you know, you need to tell them you're not an expert in everything. So just like you said, we have some overlap there in that training, is you can't be an expert in everything. So I've told one of my clients, he's a doctor, right? You specialize in these areas. So stick to that specialty. Don't try to talk about every medical topic. And then the other aspect is that is, be able to connect with your audience. So, you know, you've gone to a physical, and, you know, you have basic questions. You don't, you know, if the doctor's talking, you know, so high level, you're not going to understand it, right? Like, you know, talk about vitamin deficiency, whatever. Well, tell me what that means, right? Like, give me layman's terms. And so that's what you would train anybody, whether it's a doctor or an accountant. Talk to me like you would talk to your clients. Make me understand that. And so part of the media training is, you know, you're talking to a mass audience on TV or radio. And so give it to me in a succinct way. How do I understand this? So perfect example, right? Like King Charles, for example, getting medical treatment, right? That was a big story. Okay. So talk to me about what this is. You know, don't give me all the medical terms. Just like, okay, so I'm in the hospital for this long. This procedure is usually, you know, X amount of days, and, you know, the recovery is usually quick and it's non-invasive, etc. Very quick, to the point. Don't give me the whole, you know, well, there could be complications and it could be, you know, whatever. Just give me to the point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that business owners, they need to understand that from the media training, because you're not going to get booked otherwise if you're talking in such a verbose language about bottom line and revenue and all that. No one understands that.
Absolutely, and you're so right, and it's funny. It makes me go back to that MVP, because again, when I broke it down for that Moscow method for her MVP, you know, there were 4 categories and there were 5 points per category, and she's like, "Yeah, I can do them all." I go, "But we don't focus on them all." I go, "Because then we get lost in what do people really want." I go, the objective, we need to engage them, whether it's through a sale, which is, of course, for an MVP, the most important thing we want to do. But that sell, and when I say the most important thing, it's because we're solving a very specific problem. What is the one thing we can tap into the most out of everything? All the other stuff is included. Great. This is where we are. Put those blinders on. And normally I would never ask you to do that as an entrepreneur, but I'm asking you to do that here. It's for everyone's benefit, and you will reap the additional benefits because of that. I think people are afraid of losing out because they think they need to share everything.
It's like 2 different brains, isn't it? Because as a business owner, you need to be very detailed, but business is personal. And so you want to connect with whoever you're connecting with one-on-one. And for me, a great trick and it's done me great in news and journalism is understanding that when you're talking, into a microphone, you're talking to one person at a time. So a mentor of mine, Ed Ingles, the late Ed Ingles, great mentor of mine, was at CBS for many years. He taught me to talk to one person at a time. So if you're talking about sports, you're talking to your grandfather. If you're talking about whatever it may be, whatever topic, who are you talking to? And I do that with business too. It's like, how would I, would I talk about this with my father? Or talk about this with my best friend? Who would you be talking to? And it's much easier that way because, I think we all kind of, text and, do social media, and you can't tell every little thing in a text, right? Maybe more detail in a phone call, but in a text is to the point. So if I want to convey a message, it's going to be short and succinct. Almost do it like that, where, you want to get to the point. You're not going to tell every little detail about your day to a friend. You're going to get to the point like, hey, this happened to me today. This was the resolution. Right to the point. That's how you have to look at it. Talk to one person at a time.
Love it. Yep. I love that. So we're getting close to the end. I mean, I so enjoy talking to you all the time about these things. So let's do just a few more things. One, and I know you have a very great service that you're starting to put together for small business owners with your partner, Joe Connolly, over at WCBS. Tell us a little bit about that because I think, we've talked about me going through that program as well. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I speak all the time, but at the end of the day, that's not my world. I know what my world is, and I need to go more into that world so I can get it more exposure. So Talk to me about the service and then talk to me about the benefits or the impact of that.
So what we're getting a lot of calls on were, how can you help me get booked on TV and radio? That was something that came up a lot in January. People were calling me and asking for just basic advice. And the thing that we talk about in the newsroom here is, are they good on TV? Do they have those qualities? They talk succinctly, they're understandable. And so, I give those tips, but I realized very quickly that they also don't have a portfolio. And that's something that we look at, like, okay, what are their previous hits? So what I started doing with other business owners, other professionals, is training them, giving them behind the scenes training, but also doing an interview. And a lot of times Joe does those. And if you don't know Joe Connolly, he's a longtime veteran business reporter for WCBS in 80 and, worked for many, many years. I think he cuts it off at 40 years. But beyond that, he's not going to admit to. But no, he will, sit down, do an interview. And what we'll do is, because it's more of a friendly thing, although we want to be newsy, and as a producer, we're going to make sure that, for example, if you're a doctor, we're going to talk to medical topics that are in the news. This way you can show you and talk to things currently. But as the interview's going on, we're going to say, okay, stop, make this point this way. You could do this better. And so you get kind of on the fly training with that. And then the end product is, obviously you get training. We'll give you some connections. I mean, Joe and I have a wealth of connections, and there are other talent I work with as well, but I'm happy to make a phone call on your behalf and things like that. But the biggest thing that you'll get from that are what we call a media kit. And that media kit will be, clips you put on your social media, go on your LinkedIn, send to booking producers in TV and radio. And then you can say, hey, look, I did this interview with a reputable reporter on these topics, and it's going to all packaged together nice. And then that allows you to sell yourself, because ultimately you're your best salesperson, and we're all in sales. And so that will help you build your business brand, but also your personal brand and status. And so that's what we've been doing since January.
Yeah, and so I'm assuming the term for that is earned media that they'll be getting, or what term do you use?
Well, so we call it media kit, but earned media is basically when you get booked on radio and TV. So there's paid media where, you get to, pay to be on TV, which doesn't exist in news. It's more of, you can see like paid programming on television. There's like 30-minute infomercials. That's what paid media or commercials. But earned media when when we reach out to you, and the thing is, I mean, by building that reputation, that portfolio, you can work yourself up to be a thought leader in a space. So whatever field you're in, you want to be considered a thought leader where, if we're covering, let's say, a trial, and you're a prosecutor who can speak very well, or a defense attorney who can speak very well, and with all those qualities I laid out earlier in your podcast, well, then we may have you in the Rolodex. You may be in our email of like, hey, I'm going to call this person if this, verdict comes out, because they are great on their feet. So that's what you want to be a thought leader, whatever industry you're in.
Love it, love it. So we're going to have a link on the replay page here for this, but we also did, Neil alluded to about a few weeks before this recording, we did a kind of a webinar interview with Neil and also with Joe Connolly, which was called, I pulled it up here real quick.
It was a great title.
Yeah, Maximizing Your Media Presence, Strategies for Branding and Storytelling. So I will link to that as well, because I think that'll go deeper into specifically getting more exposure and getting that earned media. And I think what you're offering is a major service, because it does, it is definitely a piece that a lot of us entrepreneurs and business owners are probably missing as part of our overall marketing arsenal. But it is such at the right, when we're at the right time to use it, it can be extremely powerful for us to take our brand to a whole nother level.
I appreciate that. And yeah, it's an afterthought for a lot of businesses. And for smaller businesses specifically, they don't send a budget for it until they realize, hey, I need to scale at some point, and this is one tool to do that. And for digital, again, you want to be on camera and show yourself and show the process and show the sausage is made. People love behind the scenes. So yeah, it's a tool in the toolbox, and I think for businesses to budget for this, it's a smart strategy, and I certainly do with mine. And those that have done it have been able to grow their sales, and that's the key there, and they create more opportunities, as we talked about at the beginning of the
Absolutely. And I have a colleague of mine who because you mentioned, sometimes they don't have it they're not ready for it yet. I forget what you said, but she's a new nonprofit, but this young lady has been covered more times in the news than I can imagine. And I think it's not that it's by accident. It just works for her. And she's getting coverage constantly. And she did something unique. She just got back from Kentucky, because her nonprofit is around providing pajamas to families in need. I think I forget what the tagline is, but somebody else made the news for buying a pair of pajamas for a young kid who didn't have it for pajama days. And she had the uniqueness to connect with him, and then went to Kentucky, because they're New York based, and did a whole fundraiser with Starbucks and a few other with him as the centerpiece. So he got more exposure. She got exposure for her nonprofit, and just started to expand her brand. And, can she benefit from what you're doing? Because she's not necessarily sitting next to a news reporter, but she's getting this news by they're covering the business at the event. They're covering, quoting her, whatnot. So she's getting those great pieces. She's got a bright future. I guess they call them like media darlings sometimes.
Sounds like she has a great story to tell.
She has an amazing story to tell. And again, she has more news press than blog articles on her website right now. And that tells you something. And again, she'll say it, I'm still figuring this out. But it's been a huge thing, because it's gotten her in front of some pretty big organizations, especially from a nonprofit standpoint. She's getting that recognition, and now she's starting to get noticed. So
it's not just about clients; it is the B2B aspect, right? I mean, if you're a small business, you may get a larger business partner, and they may see you in media. So it's a big benefit there. But a lot of times, you fall into that, and it sounds like, she got lucky in an event, and the reporter recognized it's a great story. You have to learn to be your best advocate. It's funny when you said in the beginning, like, don't be shy, like, introduce yourself. A lot of people are shy to introduce themselves, and I get that. In person, I can be introverted like you in a sense too, and you have to learn though how to convey yourself in a way that gets attention, and it's better to do it verbally, person, share your story better than a press release, because no one reads those these days. People can read and say, their eyes glaze over. If you're dynamic in a sense, if you have a great elevator pitch, they would call it. If you have a great elevator pitch and short like, hey, this is why you should cover, our story, and don't just make it about you, but make it about the people that you help. It makes for a better story. So a nonprofit like that, that's helping a lot of people, and that's something that I think is a little bit easier. But as a business, think about your roots. Think about why you started the business. Something you asked me earlier in the podcast. Why did you start the business? And think about that story, because a lot of times the story is your story, and it's who you're helping currently, and it could be a very powerful one.
Wow, absolutely. I love everything you said there. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. I got 2 questions for you. Okay.
Sure.
Question number 1, what is your secret weapon to getting things done?
Ooh, secret weapon, getting some coffee.
I love hey, let's look. Pow.
There you go. There you go. I had 4 cups of coffee today, so I'm rolling.
Oh.
No, I mean, honestly, I think just putting your head down and working hard, being around positive people. Also, I find that when you're with negative people, it brings you down. When you're with positive people, like I used to work remote part of the time, and now coming in 5 days a week in here, and I run my business at the same time. But being around a positive environment, I love that. It really gives off great energy.
Sure. And then my last question is, what do you think is your superpower?
Ooh, my superpower. That's a great question. I don't know. I think communication. I think being a really good communicator is something that is great in business and in life. You can't go wrong if you're just being honest and sharing, and I don't think you can over communicate,
I know that.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, strategy line professionals, I hope you got a lot out of this conversation. Neil, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I look forward to having many more incredible conversations with you on camera and off camera. And is there any last things you want to leave the audience with that we may not have touched on?
I would say, you know what, have fun. If you're not enjoying what you do, then you have to change. Make sure you enjoy what you do, and most business owners do. I think, again, we live a finite amount of time, and I have learned, do things that make you happy, have fun with what you're doing, because if you're not, that's not a way to live. So go have fun with your dreaming and your business, and pursue things that are meaningful to you. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being happy and supporting your family at the same time.
Love it. Well, again, there we are, and we hope you enjoyed this episode here. Make sure you, if you're able to, visit the main page of this episode. We're going to have some really incredible links here, which include the webinar I did with Neil and also with Joe, along with a link to, if you want to check out what Neil and Joe have put together for any of you that might be in a position to want to start taking real advantage of media. And making that story, which is what we dive deep into on the call that we did together. And, again, I just thank you. I really appreciate you. I think I hit the lottery being able to connect with you and build a relationship and a bond with you. And I look forward to supporting more small businesses. And with that being said, thank you. Everyone else, give me a 1 word to describe the podcast. Make sure you rate us, and I would like 5 stars. I think I'm not saying that you have to.
Jimmy's the
best. And subscribe. Do what you got to do. If you haven't, if you're just listening and you haven't done either, shame on you. Get it done. Let's do this together. I'm in your corner, and Neil's in your corner as well. And we'll see you in another episode. So continue to be strong and continue to make impact with your business. And that brings us to the end of another enlightening journey here on the Impact Us All Business Podcast. Every story we've shared, every insight gained, is a step towards creating a world where business becomes a beacon of positive change. Your time with us is more than just listening. It's about becoming part of a movement that values growth, innovation, and the incredible impact we can have when we come together. If you're ready to be a part of this journey every step of the way, we have 3 small favors to ask. 1, please subscribe to our podcast. It's the easiest way to ensure that you never miss an episode filled with stories and strategies that matter to you. 2, leave us a review, even if it's just 1 word. Your feedback helps us grow and continue bringing you content that inspires and empowers. And 3, rate our podcast. Your ratings help others find us, expanding our community of impactors who, just like you, want to make a difference in the world. Every step you take with us is a step towards impactful change. Your voice, your action, and your participation, it all adds up to a global movement. Let's continue to reshape the world, one business, one idea, one story at a time. Together, we can impact us all. See you in the next episode.